My stepson once looked me in the eye and said I wasn't his real father, so I had no business telling him what to do. You mean nothing to me, you're nobody. That moment stayed with me, so later, when the topic of college tuition came up, I told him flat out he could ask his real dad to foot the bill. Honestly, I never imagined I'd be sharing something this personal. But I need to let it out. My name's David, I'm 45 years old, and I run a high-end wine bar in town that I built from the ground up. It's done incredibly well, and I take a lot of pride in what I've accomplished. That very bar is where I first crossed paths with someone who, back then, I thought might be the one. Her name was David. I'd hired her as a bookkeeper to help get my finances in order. She was sharp, organized, and carried herself with a quiet grace that immediately caught my attention. But it wasn't just her skill that stood out. There was a calm warmth to her that made those late nights poring over spreadsheets feel a little less draining. We kept things strictly business at first. She was the new hire, and I didn't want to overstep any boundaries. But after a few weeks, I noticed myself hanging around her office more than necessary, making up reasons to check on her progress just to spend a few extra minutes with her. Eventually, I worked up the nerve and made my move. One evening, after we'd finished reviewing the monthly numbers, I turned to her and said, "Let me take you out to dinner." She paused, gave me a little smile, and asked, "Are you asking me that as my boss, or as a man?" As a man, I told her. That dinner turned into 2, then 3, and before long, we were seriously talking about building a life together. Everything felt like it was falling into place. David was loving and present, and her son, Logan, was respectful and kind. It finally felt like I had the kind of family I'd been searching for. A year after we started dating, we got married, and David and Logan moved into my home. In the beginning, things were great. I threw myself into being the best stepdad I could possibly be. I took Logan to ball games, helped him finish school projects, made sure he had everything he needed. I paid for vacations, bought him the latest sneakers he had his eye on, and tried to give him the kind of upbringing I'd only dreamed of when I was a kid. From time to time, Logan would still spend weekends with his dad, and to be completely honest, I was never fully okay with that. I knew a bit about Kevin's past, and it was ugly. I'd heard about him nearly burning down their old place more than once in a drunken stupor, which is part of why he lost custody in the first place, but David stood firm. She said it was important for Logan to keep that relationship, that Kevin had cleaned up his act. He's still his father. She'd remind me anytime I voiced a concern. Logan needs to believe his dad still cares. But when I finally saw Kevin in person at a school function, he didn't strike me as someone who'd found sobriety. The way he leaned a little too much when standing still, the glassy eyes that wouldn't lock onto anyone. They were all red flags. Still, I bit my tongue. After all, who was I to say anything? I was just the stepdad, right? God, if I had only known then what I know now. If I'd realized back then that trying to be the perfect stepfather might have blinded me to what was really happening, but hindsight always paints a clearer picture. And at that point, the real problems hadn't even started, not even close. Time raced forward, and suddenly we were staring down Logan's 18th birthday. His graduation was around the corner too, and the stress had him pacing through the house like a bundle of nerves. He kept mumbling things like, "What if no one shows up? What if it's a disaster? What if I ruin it?" One night, I found him caught up in his usual spiral, so I put my hand gently on his shoulder to reassure him. "Hey, relax," I said. "I've got a killer idea. How about we throw the party at the bar? I'll reserve the best lounge section just for you." His face lit up right away. The bar had built a solid reputation in town, and I knew Logan had always wanted to show it off to his friends. "Seriously?" he asked, already grabbing his phone. "This is gonna blow up my Instagram. Everyone at school's gonna freak out." I threw myself headfirst into planning. I wanted it to be flawless. I even took him shopping for a sleek black designer suit. Something sharp that made him look like he belonged on Wall Street. He looked like a young executive in that suit. I gave him a nod of approval and asked, "So, how many people do you think you're inviting?" He fidgeted with his phone, looking a bit unsure. "Maybe 30? Sounds good. Mind sending me a list so I can make sure we've got enough food and space?" I asked. He shrugged it off and said quickly, "I don't really have it yet, just plan for 30. Okay?" Looking back, I wish I'd pressed him harder for that list, but I was so deep in making everything perfect that I let it go. The tables were set to perfection. The lighting was soft and golden. The whole Upper West wine bar looked like it had been made for a celebration like this. It had the right balance. Cool enough for teens, elegant enough to feel grown up. We had a curated menu of mocktails and fancy finger foods. Logan looked incredible in his tailored suit, laughing with a group of friends while someone snapped photos. David's side of the family was chatting with his classmates, and the energy felt light and festive until he showed up. I saw Kevin the moment he stepped in, long before he even said a word. The way he staggered slightly with every step, the unfocused gleam in his eyes. He was drunk. "I came to wish my boy a happy birthday," he announced loudly, instantly grabbing everyone's attention. I was sitting next to Logan when Kevin stumbled over to our table. His eyes landed on me, filled with pure disdain. "Get up," he slurred, waving me away like I was nothing. "That's my seat. I'm his real father, not you." His words cut through the room like a blade, but I kept my tone steady. "There's plenty of space at the next table with the other guests. Why don't you take a seat there?" I said evenly. "No," he snapped, his voice now edged with a growl. "This is my place, you need to get out of my way." I looked to David, hoping she'd say something. Step in, help calm things down. But she didn't even lift her head. She just sat there, pale, staring at her hands like they might reveal some kind of escape route. I took a breath, trying to center myself. This was Logan's night. I wasn't going to let it derail into a disaster if I could help it. "Let me be absolutely clear," I said, my eyes locked onto Kevin's. "You have two choices. Either sit at the next table with the guests or be escorted out by security." His face twisted with rage. "Oh, listen to you," he sneered, wobbling slightly as he leaned against the table. "Big shot with his wine bar. Throwing his money around like that makes you a father." He spat the words like poison. "You think you can just buy everything, don't you? Buy my son, buy my family." Around us, I could see people starting to notice. A few regulars were pretending not to listen, but their ears were tuned in. My staff stood quietly along the perimeter, eyes on me, waiting for my signal. "You think a house, a suit, and a bunch of cash makes you a better man?" Kevin ranted on, louder now, more bitter with every word. "You think that replaces me?" And then it happened, before anyone could stop him. He grabbed a plate off the table and flung it to the floor. It shattered, the crash slicing through the silence. Cheese and cured meats flew across the marble. Then another plate, and another. A bottle of sparkling water tipped, spilling in a slow stream over the wood grain of the bar. I didn't need to say anything. One look to my security team, and they were moving. "Sir," said the head of security, stepping forward, firm and calm. "It's time for you to leave." They took Kevin by the arm. He didn't resist at first, just muttered something slurred and bitter. As they led him toward the door, he yelled back over his shoulder, the words tumbling into a mess of nonsense before the door finally swung shut behind him. Silence, the kind that makes your skin itch. Then, slowly, the sound of conversation returned. I stood, put on my best smile, the kind I'd practiced for years behind that bar, and raised my voice. "Apologies, everyone. Please enjoy the rest of the evening. Drinks are on the house." My regulars barely blinked, they were used to chaos. Maybe not that kind, but close enough. Within minutes, they were back to laughing over half-finished glasses. But at our table, things were different. The energy had shifted. Logan's friends and family were whispering to each other, casting quick glances toward him, toward David, toward me. I could feel the judgment simmering. Logan sat stiffly, his shoulders tight, his fork moving food around without taking a bite. That designer suit, the one that made him look so grown up earlier, now just seemed too big for him. He looked like a kid drowning in fabric, trying not to cry in front of his friends. The party he'd dreamed of, the one he was so excited to post about, had turned into something else entirely. After about an hour, he rubbed his temples and muttered, "I've got a headache. Can we go home?" That was it. People took the cue, they offered polite goodbyes. But the whispers didn't stop. I could hear them as they left. "Poor kid. Did you see his dad?" Inside the house, Logan went straight to his room without a word. I helped the girls get settled upstairs, then headed to his door, hesitating before knocking. I wanted to say something, anything, but in the end, I didn't. The next morning, he came down to breakfast looking exhausted, shadows under his eyes, a blank expression. He sat down, staring into his lap. "How are you feeling, buddy?" I asked, my voice soft. "Fine," he said, eyes fixed on his cereal. That was all. The days that followed were thick with silence. It was like the house had changed. The lively, talkative Logan was gone, replaced by someone closed off, distant. Every time I walked into a room where he and David were talking, he would go quiet, just like that. Like a light switch flipped off. One night, after he went to bed, I turned to David. "Don't you think we should do something? Maybe talk to someone? Get him help?" She just waved me off. "He's fine. He's still processing it. He needs space." But he wasn't fine, none of us were. Even so, we showed up for his graduation, sat in the audience, clapped so hard my hands stung when they called his name. He looked sharp in that cap and gown, and when he glanced our way and gave a little smile, I dared to hope that maybe things were turning around. Back at the house, we threw a celebration. His favorite foods lined the counter: truffle fries, steak sliders, the mini crab cakes he used to sneak from the kitchen at the bar, and the cake, a 3-tiered chocolate beast that took a week to perfect. His classmates filled the house. The chatter was light. Laughter filled the rooms. Logan was smiling again, talking, looking almost like himself. For a few hours, things felt okay, like we might be coming back from it. And then his phone rang. Logan stepped into the hallway to take the call. And when he came back, something in his face had changed. There was a stillness to him, a quiet kind of resolve. For the first time in days, he walked right up to me without hesitation. He said his dad was coming over, wanted to congratulate him on graduating. I felt it instantly, like ice dropping into my stomach. No, absolutely not. I reminded him of what had happened at the birthday party. How Kevin had shown up drunk, made a scene, destroyed property, how we were still dealing with the aftermath. Logan's voice cut through mine, sharper than I expected. He said none of that would have happened if I just moved and let his dad sit down. That it was my fault. He said I should have stepped aside because Kevin is his real dad. It hit me square in the chest. So that's what he'd been holding in all this time? That I was the problem? I looked to David, hoping, begging she'd step in, say something, remind Logan what had really happened. I asked her, please, to explain just how inappropriate Kevin's behavior had been that night. She didn't even look up, just sat there, staring at her hands again like they held the universe's answers. The same silence, the same paralysis she'd shown that night at the bar. Something inside me cracked wide open. 5 years of tiptoeing around everyone's emotions. 5 years of smiling through nonsense, of trying to be what they all needed. And I was done. I told Logan, plain and clear, that it was my wine bar. I had planned that party top to bottom. For him, I bought the damn designer suit he insisted on, made sure every detail was perfect. I gave him everything I could that night. And Kevin? He showed up wasted. He embarrassed him in front of everyone. He didn't even bring a gift. All he gave Logan was a public meltdown and a mess. Logan's eyes lit up with fury. His whole body tensed. Then he exploded. He shouted that it was always about money with me, that I thought I could buy everything and control everyone. He spun toward his classmates, who were frozen in the living room, looking anywhere but at us. He laughed bitterly and said it'd be nice to have a normal person show up. Someone real. He said his real dad was on the way, and then he gestured to me like I was dirt under his shoe. I told him his father wasn't coming in this house. Not after the chaos he caused. Not after everything. That's when Logan snapped completely. His face flushed red, and he started screaming. Right there in front of everyone. He told me I wasn't his dad, that I was nothing, that I had no right to tell him what to do. He said I was just some guy his mom married for his money. The room fell silent, so quiet it hurt. I watched his friends shift around awkwardly, some pretending to scroll their phones, others suddenly fascinated by the ceiling. Logan turned to them and said, "Let's get out of here." Said he didn't want to celebrate in my house. He practically spat the word like it was toxic. They all followed him out, heads down, avoiding me like I was some kind of monster. The door slammed behind them, hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood there, alone, surrounded by untouched food and half-empty plates, feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. That had to be the moment, the breaking point. David had to say something after that. She finally cleared her throat, and when she spoke, her voice was icy. She told me I had no right to throw the house and money in Logan's face, that it was low to remind him I'd paid for everything. I stared at her, stunned. That was her takeaway? I asked her where she'd been when her ex was throwing plates across my wine bar, where she was just now when her son stood in front of all his friends and screamed at me. She didn't flinch, just shook her head, like I was the problem. She said I was the adult, and that I should have known better than to argue with a teenager. I let out a bitter laugh, told her she should have known better than to disappear every time things got uncomfortable, that she sat there over and over, letting her ex and her son walk all over me while she did nothing. Well, I wasn't going to be anyone's punching bag anymore. David's face went hard, and without another word, she turned and went upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the guest room door slam shut. The next morning, breakfast felt like a funeral. David sat across from me, picking at her eggs like they offended her, refusing to meet my eyes. I was just about to get up from the table when Logan walked into the kitchen, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. I caught the smell of alcohol before Logan even reached the table. Thick and unmistakable, clinging to him like sweat. It was barely 9 in the morning. I glanced at David, just waiting for something. Some flicker of concern, a comment, anything that acknowledged her teenage son coming home reeking of booze. She didn't say a word, just stared at her scrambled eggs like they were the most fascinating thing in the world. I asked where he'd been all night, keeping my tone as neutral as I could manage. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes and so much contempt it made my skin crawl. Said it was none of my business. Reminded me again that I wasn't his dad, that I wasn't anybody, just some empty space taking up room in his life. Then he turned and stumbled upstairs like nothing had happened. David stayed seated, silent, again. At this point, I was starting to think her silence was a kind of gift, a twisted superpower. She could make herself disappear from any situation by just not reacting. The week that followed felt like living in a haunted house. Logan wouldn't speak to me. Not directly anyway, he found clever ways around it. He'd look at David and say, "Dad, can you ask your husband to pass the salt?" Or walk into the room, stop cold, and say, "This guy's in my way," and just stand there staring until I moved. I didn't bite, didn't flinch. I kept my mouth shut and my eyes open. 5 years I'd tried. 5 years I'd bent over backward to be the perfect stepfather. I was done. Let them show their true selves. I wasn't even surprised when the show really started. That Sunday, David and I were sitting through yet another quiet dinner when Logan came barreling into the room, waving an envelope like he'd just hit the jackpot. "Dad." I got in, he shouted, practically vibrating. "NYU. I got into NYU." He ran up and hugged David like he hadn't spent the past 2 weeks pretending I was a ghost. She was beaming, arms around him, both of them glowing like it was Christmas morning. And then, with the most smug grin I'd ever seen on a human face, Logan turned to her and said, "Tell your husband he needs to pay for my tuition." That was it. Something inside me just snapped. I smiled, tight and cold. I told him no, that I wouldn't be paying for his education, that he'd made it crystal clear I wasn't his father, that I was nothing, so that's what he'd get from me, nothing. He should ask his real dad. His face turned purple, he started shaking, called me vindictive, said I was evil. Tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. But I felt nothing. Not anymore. It was like standing in the middle of a hurricane, safe behind a window. I could see the destruction, but it couldn't touch me. He spun toward David, demanded that she make me pay, and she tried. She really tried. Slipped right into that familiar tone that always made my blood run cold. Patronizing, syrupy, dismissive. "Come on, honey, quit joking around," she said like she was talking to a child. "You know you need to pay for Logan's education." I stood up and pushed my chair back. Said I'd already made myself clear. I wasn't about to spend tens of thousands of dollars on someone who treated me like a stranger in my own home. Then I walked out, climbed the stairs, and left them both to stew. Logan followed, screaming, plates crashing, chairs dragging across the floor, full meltdown. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened, numb, like father, like son. I knew David wouldn't be far behind. She never missed her cue. About half an hour later, the door slammed open and she stormed in, face flushed with rage. She said she was sick of it, sick of my games, that I needed to grow up and pay for Logan's education. I told her no. Said she and her ex could figure it out. Between the two of them, they'd manage. She started pacing, jaw clenched, eyes wild. Accused me of being selfish. Said Logan was just a teenager, that I needed to be the bigger person, the adult. I'd heard all of it before, that same tired script. Be the bigger man, David, let it go, David, he's just a kid, David. And every time, I had swallowed it, smiled, nodded, opened my wallet, watched them take and take and take. Not anymore. I told her Logan was old enough to know exactly what he was doing. That he'd shown me nothing but disrespect. That I wasn't going to invest in the future of someone who treated me like a paycheck and a punching bag. She stopped pacing, turned toward me slowly, and then she said it. She said if I didn't pay, she'd file for divorce. She stood there waiting, arms crossed, ready for me to panic, to beg, to fold like I always had before. I didn't. I shrugged, told her fine, get divorced. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. She hadn't expected me to call her bluff. I told her I'd call my lawyer in the morning, that she and Logan should start figuring out where they were going to live next. She didn't respond, just stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Then she turned, walked out, and shut the door behind her. Quietly, the next morning, I came down the stairs to find Logan already at the dining table, like he'd been waiting to ambush me. Everything about the scene felt staged. His red, watery eyes, David sitting next to him with that carefully arranged look of gentle authority. She smiled at me, and for the first time, I saw the manipulation in that smile. I don't know how I'd missed it all these years. "Honey," she said sweetly, "we've all had a chance to calm down and think." Logan nodded along with her, eager, like some overtrained actor hitting his cue. "We just overreacted yesterday," he said, every word coated in artificial warmth. I stood in the doorway and something shifted. I felt it, that strange, steady clarity that comes when you finally see through the performance. For the first time, I wasn't caught in it. I was just watching the show from the audience. David kept going, her voice now all reason and understanding. "We're a family, families fight, but they also make up, and since you were the one who escalated this whole college thing, maybe it would mean a lot if you took the first step." Logan chimed in like it was all rehearsed. "Yeah, and if you helped with tuition, it would show that you're really sorry, that you want to fix things." I nearly laughed. Did they really think I was that easy? That a few sugary words and a performance of reconciliation would be enough to bring me back into line? "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I just got off the phone with my lawyer. Divorce papers will be ready this afternoon." The expressions on their faces snapped so fast it was almost funny. Logan's fake smile vanished into raw panic. David's face turned that dark red I'd come to know all too well. I looked at Logan, told him flatly, "Congratulations. You won't have to deal with your not-dad interfering in your life anymore. Isn't that what you wanted?" This time, the tears were real. He broke down, but I'd learned by now, real tears or fake, the goal was always the same: control. David jumped to her feet so fast her chair screeched backward. She didn't speak, just stormed upstairs. I heard drawers being ripped open, closet doors slamming. They packed in silence. No more accusations. No more crocodile apologies. Just the sound of bags zipping and lives unraveling. I thought that would be the end. I was wrong. That night, the messages started. First David, "We all said things we didn't mean. Let's talk this out like adults." Then Logan, "I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but you're being really unfair about college." I didn't respond, so they switched tones. "You're tearing this family apart. You'll regret this when you're old and alone. Enjoy your money because that's all you've got now." Still, I said nothing. The divorce went quickly. The prenup held up without a hitch. David tried to contest it, of course, but my lawyer cut through the noise like a scalpel. She walked away with nothing. Not a cent from the wine bar. Not a dollar from my savings. Every so often, I hear bits and pieces through mutual acquaintances. They're living in a cramped apartment across town. Logan never made it to NYU. Couldn't afford it. And now he's folding clothes in a mall somewhere. David's trying to restart her career in accounting. But it's not going well. As for me, I redecorated. Got rid of every piece of furniture that reminded me of them. Repainted the walls, changed the layout. The house feels bigger now, brighter, or maybe it's just me. Finally free from the burden of trying to earn love from people who only ever saw me as a transaction.